Here we go. So welcome everyone to this information session on the Conscious Food Systems Leadership Program. I'm happy to introduce you to our two trainers, Jeroen and Charlotte, that will be with us leading this course. And we'll let them introduce just in a few minutes. So I want to give you more information about the Conscious Food Systems Alliance. So this course has been organized by the Conscious Food Systems Alliance in collaboration with the Inner Green Deal. Let me just open my slides. And basically, as you know, the Conscious Food Systems Alliance is an initiative that has been convened by UNDP. The focus is really on the inner dimension of food systems transformation. So in particular, the way in which we describe the Alliance is a movement of food and agriculture commodities practitioners coming from, oops, can you see? Yes. So it's a movement of food, agriculture, and consciousness practitioners that is convened by UNDP and united around a common goal, which is to support people from across food and agriculture systems to cultivate the inner capacities that activate systemic change and regeneration. And when we talk about the inner capacities, we really talk about mindset, values, beliefs, but also those transformative qualities and skills such as compassion, the ability to listen deeply, self-awareness, resilience, love and joy that are essential for making our food systems more healthy, respectful for the environment, but also fair for people, nature, and planet. And a central message of the Alliance, which brings together today more than 300 members and is followed by over 2,000 people globally, is the importance of reconnection with self, with others, and nature. We launched the Alliance back in 2022 after 2 years of incubation. It has been 2 years of collaboration and co-creation with a core group of members. And yes, today we are very happy to be here to launch this program. So I pass the words to Jeroen and Charlotte to quickly introduce themselves, and then we can deep dive into this program.
Go ahead, Charlotte.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm the practice advisor working with the Conscious Food Systems Alliance Secretariat with Noemi. I've been working on food systems for almost 25 years now with emergency NGOs in crisis-affected countries, 12 years with Food and Agriculture Organization, and quite a few years now as a consultant, mostly supporting multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder collaboration on food and nutrition. And I've landed on this theme of inner capacities because after all these years, I could feel that we can't really get things to change deeply unless we also work on the inner change. So after having seen a few things getting stuck, I'm very, very pleased that we can really take some of these issues at their core. And it's a pleasure to be with you today. Jeroen.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm pleased that there's such interest in this program. So yeah, what can I say? I'm the co-founder of the Inner Green Deal, and with our organization, we seek to cultivate kind of the qualities and capacities to accelerate change. And so I'm really coming from that inner dimension, and I'm really interested in improving, of course, the outcome in our food systems. I live in Brussels. What else should I say? 3 kids, and I'm really glad to be here. I'm curious where you're coming from and how you see that linkage between the inner and outer. And that's something we'll explore today. Right? I hope you bear with us. This is really an information session, so it's not necessarily fully representative of our program. So we're just going to give you a quick download, 10-15 minutes about the program, the aims, how it's structured. And then Charlotte will do a brief practice and we'll have some Q&A. But if you don't mind, let me just diving into what the program is about. Is that okay? Also, Naomi? Great. So let me share some slides. So first of all, as we were saying, this is really a collaboration between, on the one hand, the Conscious Food System and the Inner Green Deal. We have been delivering programs with the EU, but also we've done a first pilot program with staff of UNDP, and we will share later on today some of the findings. Okay. Just for now, let's go through some of the basics. So what are we talking about? Let's start with you. So our target audience, if we can say it like that, is really you. So food systems practitioners in whatever environment you're working, whether it's public or private, NGOs, international, local. We really are looking for a nice mix of people. What is, of course, helpful, it's an online program, and that's unfortunate as it is, but it does help us to reach a lot of people. And for that, we need good internet and fluency in English to make it feasible. Now, we did already receive, can I say that, Naomi, 87 registrations, which is pretty amazing, for 35 places. So fortunately or unfortunately, we will need to do some kind of going through that list and see, who'd be best placed for this first cohort of members. And we look to those that have the capacity to integrate these insights into their food system, into their work. And also what's really helpful and important for us is that you apply with colleagues from the same organization so that together you have a greater chance to bring some of these learnings into your organization or ecosystem. And also, of course, we appreciate those that have already spent quite a bit of time understanding what COFSA is about and who can bring this forward. Okay? But not if you're worried, if you're reading this like this doesn't immediately concern me, then we will run more programs over the next year and a half. So at least 2 more programs are already planned. Now, what else to say? Well, I mean, I think it is, let me just take a few minutes to say, what is the linkage between inner and outer, and why do we think that's important, and why this program? And, I'm not saying anything new, but to be able to transform our food system, we will, of course, need more innovation, more funding, and more technological change. But it's also becoming clear that these are not sufficient in themselves. So the research is clearly showing that to accelerate outer change, we need inner change. And what do we mean with this inner dimension? Well, this is something, of course, that we're going to explore, but by first definition, the inner human dimension of sustainability refers to our individual as well as our collective mindsets, values, worldviews, as well as a range of both cognitive, emotional, and relational capacities that we all have, right? Whether it's our ability to think longer term or our ability to be empathic and listen to the issues of others. So in other words, the inner human dimension of sustainability here refers to the inner qualities that influence our ability to navigate and facilitate food system transformation. Okay. And as illustrated here on this slide, that inner dimension might be a bigger lever for change than we typically assume, and perhaps even bigger than some of these outer material changes. And to make it a bit more concrete and apply it to our food system, our research and the theory of change that we're building on is that at the heart of the food crisis is the problem of disconnection. We feel that we're by and large disconnected from ourselves at times when we're busy running around, from others, leading to polarization, and of course from nature. And this manifests at different levels in our system, as you can see here. And so to transform, we really need to create these inner capacities to reconnect at all these levels. And that means values, conscious of our thoughts, the biases we have, learning to listen better, cultivating empathy and compassion, and deepen our ways to collaborate. And that should then help to have, in general, a shift in consciousness, which is really a very short word to say a lot. But ultimately, by creating these capacities, by working together, we shift from these problems that are lined up on the left of the slide to these better outcomes of reconnection listed here on the right side. Now, there's much more to say, but I think for now I would like to go through it a bit more quickly, and happy to come back to it if you have questions. Now, maybe coming back to the program specifically, we have 4 overarching objectives that you can see here. Of course, there's an element of understanding, as we were just going over, what's the link between inner and outer? But then what was really important, as I just said, about this theory of change is to help us reconnect to self, others, and nature, and then cultivating inner qualities that are helpful for transformation. And then finally, and this is why I think almost the most important thing is then not just to say, oh, this was a nice program and let's move on. No, then really consciously see and practice and talk about it and practice again to integrate this in the work that we do. Right? And that's why it's so important to be a few of your organizations, so you have a body system and you have a bigger chance of being heard. Now, briefly then, sort of, what's behind all that. We work on the framework of the inner development goals that you may be familiar with. We have 5 core modules, which you see lined up here, which is around being and thinking, and then relating to others, to also collaborating and acting. So it's always this combination of the inner and the outer. Every module consists of experiential exercises that seek to cultivate qualities of that specific module, and an invitation then to apply that in your specific food system. Okay? Now, there's a lot more to say, and I'm happy to go more in detail, but just to give you as an example, you may think, well, what do we do with being and how's that helpful? Well, in being, we think about values and talk about kind of an inner compass and how that helps us in our work that is often so ambiguous and where the business case shifts from day to day. So to have clear understanding of values beyond, the obvious is often very helpful. It's also a really good way to build relationships and to help you bring into the program. Now, it's not just, let's say, the modules that I talked about. We also have steps in between each module. And a core part of that is practice. So we invite you to cultivate certain practices that bring more space. And I don't mean this in a weird way, but I mean it if you're busy running around like we often are in this field, then our ability to listen and consider other approaches is just so limited. So by practicing, whether it's walking in nature, our attention, whether it's meditation, whether it's movement, but we cultivate practices that calm ourselves and help us connect. We also, there's a cognitive element, we have content on the platform, we can exchange about that. So that it means that the sessions, the modules, that when we're together are more interactive. Then, of course, we will try to practice concrete habit change, reflect, journal, and invite you to do walks every week or part of the modules. Just a sense that, yes, we have a learning platform with interesting content and where you can also interact with each other. What we also have is a mobile application that will help you to practice some of the things that I referred to earlier, including guided nature walks, including meditations. And then maybe just very briefly on outcomes of previous programs. We've done with the Inner Green Deal, but also together with our partners, run many programs at the EU with the Inner Development Goals. And we had a session with a pilot program, UNDP. And we always do a pre and post assessment of the program. It's quite in-depth, and it's sometimes a little bit painful to work with these hardcore scientists that really push you to the limit and say, why is that and why is that, and let's analyze this and this and that. But ultimately helpful because it informs us what works and what doesn't. And one of the really interesting findings from one of our first programs was this, and it's obvious, of course, but it needs to be said, and sometimes we forget it, that those that self-report higher levels of compassion also report higher levels of pro-environmental action. So to put it simply, the more someone indicated that they care and they care about others, the more likely they were to be pro-environmental. And then specifically about the program, well, what's interesting, it really depends who's there and what you have already practiced. But it's always a mix, since we cultivate qualities that are about the inner dimension as well as the outer dimension. You know, the types of outcomes vary across persons. But by and large, we see large increases in strengthening being and relating qualities, which we feel are very transformative for the work we do. And then in addition, when we look at action and integration of the inner qualities, we found, and we're very happy to see these kind of levels, high levels of initiating changes that are pretty substantial already during the program in the organization they work, which may include cooperation with external, internal stakeholders, learning new things and passing them on, different ways to project management, what should we measure, and also even thinking differently about what are strategic priorities, really, when you think about it. So we found that pretty substantial. And of course, this really depends on you and the colleagues that join the program. Now, you know, lots of quotes from what people appreciate, what they don't, and what they take out. And this varies, but I'm happy to share about that more. And Noemi and Charlotte are very familiar with they were also in the previous program, and we can talk about that more. But maybe I pause here and simply remind you these are the dates, and remind you that it is really important to be able to attend those dates. And of course, you know, if it so happens that on one particular date you can't make it, but a colleague can, then of course that's fine. But we do expect you to be really active participant, and you should really free up time, not just for these modules, but also in between work to really practice, reflect, read, interact, and think about and start experimenting with changes in your organization. So free up time there and think about whether you have that time, or at least whether you're able and considering to free up time because you feel this important. Right. So then how to apply, Noemi can guide you through that, but essentially we expect you to fill in a short form which asks you a couple of questions about things you work on. We'd like you to apply before the end of the month. And yes, we will need to go through the candidates that we feel are most suitable for this first cohort. And and we hope that you become, of course, a member of the COFSA Alliance. And Noemi, can you say a few words? What does that actually mean? Because I think it doesn't involve lots of hoops and challenges, but maybe you want to clarify.
Yeah. So in order to attend this training course, basically you need to be part of the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, and to be part and become a member of the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, you just need to fill a Google form. So it's quite intuitive and easy, but basically explaining the motivation why you are interested in this, in exploring this link between inner and outer change. What's your organization doing? So if it's more involved in food or more involved in the inner development sector or other sectors. So it's very easy and intuitive, I would say. And all the information on our website, join the movement page, and I can post in the chat.
Yeah. And maybe I'll just add one thing. And why do we emphasize all this? Well, it's also, it's a free program, and we were funded, UNDP and Inner Green Deal together, to deliver these programs. And we offer this. And sometimes it's easy for people to sign up. Oh yeah, that sounds kind of interesting. But what we're all expecting, and our donor as well, is to say, okay, we really hope that this will lead then to change somehow. And of course, we never know exactly what the outcome is going to be, but we hope that you give it your best, because it matters. Matters to us, matters to those who make this program possible. So I'll just take a deep breath and I hand over to Charlotte to let this sink in a bit.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeroen and Noemi. Well, Jeroen, you talked about making space, and we're going to do just that now. Just take a couple of minutes to really let this all sink in, and also to give you a little bit of a taster of the kind of experiences we'll be offering in this course. So I'll invite you, if you can, to sit comfortably, maybe even close your eyes, detach them from the screen, or if you're near a window, you might want to watch outside. Here it's quite sunny in France. But take a moment to be still. We talked about being, so take a moment to be with your body, be with your breath. Maybe breathing deeply at first. You've taken in a lot of information, so taken a lot of oxygen, and as you breathe out, make more space. You may want to appreciate giving yourself the time to be here to explore this. Maybe also appreciate that you're part of a broader circle, showing us that there's a growing community of people interested in this. Feel the collective space that you're standing in. And I invite you to reflect or feel, what did this presentation Jeroen just shared evoke for you? Did you sense maybe some curiosity or enthusiasm? Maybe you were perplexed by certain things, might have been intimidated. What's bubbling up in you as you contemplate joining this course? Is there a term or a word that already triggered some self-reflection that's inviting you to see some things in how you work on food systems with a new eye? Allow this space to really integrate all that was shared, or at least glimpses of it. And maybe a question or some questions are bubbling up at the surface of your mind, or something you'd like to share with the group. And I invite you to know that you are in a safe space. There's space for many perspectives and all questions, many ideas. These are spaces for co-creation. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and we'd be happy to hear from you. Anything you'd like to bring to us as questions could be very practical. It can also be a bit deeper. The floor is yours. Thank you, Moonstar. Hope, commitment, and community. Very beautiful. And Belay, I see your question in the chat where you've filled in the application, but you've not received any confirmation. And I think, Noemi, you can explain, but indeed we're harvesting registrations, but then we'll be composing a group. We'll have to, as Jeroen said, make some priorities. And we'll also be working to make a group that is quite diverse and, that's able to learn from each other and complement each other. So, but Noemi and Jeroen, do you want to add a bit more about when will people get confirmation of their registration?
Yeah, I think the application will be open until the end of March. So, and then we will start reviewing. So I would imagine mid-April, probably we can have an answer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeroen, but
Yeah, it depends on your hard work, Naomi. I know. Yeah.
There's also a question from Chandra about whether there's a quota for each country as part of the 35. Let's just say it's probably the other way around. Rather than a strict quota, we will be looking for geographic diversity in the group, not have, 15 people from Europe and no, so we really value in COPSA this regional diversity because there's a lot to be learned from one another. So it will be more that's the way we're going to look at it. And will there be a certificate? Anne Catherine is asking.
Yes, I think the short answer is yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And I hope also that maybe to that point, I hope you'll join afterwards as an active member, as well as potentially someone who would like to bring this type of work forward, whether it's in your organization or maybe as a facilitator. Maybe some of you here are facilitators. And ultimately, I think this is right now a first program after a pilot, but ultimately we will work towards that model of being able to empower you and give you access to materials so that you can work with it.
Mm.
And maybe there's some we haven't even, it really depends on what's coming out, how we do that exactly.
Francesca, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Sounds like an absolutely incredible program. A question about the final stage, the impact. Inner work for outer change. It really struck me when you commented, we all know this, but, and it does feel like making that connection between the inner work that is being done is something quite subtle, quite difficult to quantify or qualify, but we know it's going on. So I was just curious if you had a moment to share a little about how people would bring this inner work into the organization, how this impact would be measured or acknowledged by organizations who are perhaps less sympathetic to the proposal, which I think we all take as a given.
Well, thank you for a very good question, and I think the answer varies a lot on the context. So often, depending on where you and your organization are, it is more of an awareness journey that, hey, it matters how we show up. For instance, are we sometimes more showing up as activists with a certain agenda and push for things? How does that affect others in our system? Are there other ways of collaborating? Or are we really frustrated now with lack of progress? And how does that show? So sometimes it's really in stages. So sometimes it can be about that level of awareness where you create circles within your own organization and listen to that and create awareness. And then there are much more further stages one can imagine, is that you have these also with your external stakeholders. You reflect on the strategy and the core business of your organization itself. You know, what intended and unintended consequences are there? And, you know, we then also have often activities that flow out of this, where people look at their own strategy and say, well, what should we do differently? And this can be either sometimes initially quite internally focused. You know, are we leading really by example? And should we perhaps internally do things a bit differently? For instance, reduce our footprint, or are we really conscious about how we buy and how we act? And you know, so sometimes these activities and inner projects are quite internal. And then sometimes it's quite much more external, and you could think about in a way of what you come up with as your handprint. So the positive action you could bring into the world and into your value and ecosystem. So, and these could be a range of activities, and people always come up with very creative ideas. And the challenge is, how do you continue with these ideas beyond the program? And that's why it's so helpful to join with a few people from your organization, so you can decide, you become the ambassadors of change, and you could create little groups for reflection, meditation, nature walks, whatever is needed. And then you can also, after the program, join the community of COFSA, the practice community, to help you continue on that journey. And sorry, I don't know if I was clear enough, because it's quite subtle, and it really depends where you are and what you can bring into your organization that makes sense.
Yeah, if I may add, I think
Yeah, please,
the
Shawnee.
whole question. I mean, it's a question we're holding also in COFSA beyond this work is, and we see that change needs to take place at the individual level, at the collective level, and at the institutional level. And it's really difficult to have a significant impact if those are not all aligned. But it's also very difficult to align them, which is why it's work in progress. And I think it's a step by step. And you might find that the way an impact looks is very different from one organization to the other, as Jeroen was saying, because it all depends where you're starting. And sometimes, you know, you might have a lot of changes at the individual level that are not manifesting in a strategic change because there's too much of an institutional blockage, but maybe you're building up something and then bang, there can be a shift, you know, a tipping point where all of a sudden you have something, or maybe a new manager who's all of a sudden super open to that, and all the staff are ready, and bang, you have a big strategy shift. So it's very difficult, but part of the process I think we're seeing is learning together what that looks like. In COFSA, we've drafted a monitoring, evaluation, learning framework, trying to, you know, with very open questions, and there's research around these things, but it's all quite new. And so the more we are sensitive to these issues and in part of a community, the more we can also learn from each other how it works and how we make the case so that our organizations pay more attention to this. Yeah, hope it helps, Francesca. And there was a practical question from Louise, but I'm just gonna read it out. Noemi answered in the chat, but you know, so if she was asking if you were applying with a colleague from the same organization, would each person count as one of the 35? And yes, the 35 is 35 individuals. And so, you know, if you're two, we might have 14 organizations represented, for example, in that group.
Yeah, maybe the reason why we're so being difficult, I know, you know, we also run programs of 100 people, yeah? And, you know, one day maybe we consider that. I thought for this initial program, we've done a pilot, yes, we've run many programs like this, but we also thought that we would like to give you the opportunity to have quite an intimate space to talk and exchange, to practice. And as Francesca was hinting to, it's not always easy to bring this in your organization. So, to have kind of an intimate setting where you can speak your mind, where you can practice, you can get feedback, and where you can support yourself as peers and coach each other. I think we thought that at this stage it's helpful to have a rather small group. Okay.
There was also a question about whether people can join COFSA even if they're not part of the program, and absolutely. And even if for some reason, you end up not being selected in this cohort, I mean, there'll be the other cohorts, as Jeroen said, but we have quite a few events that are happening online. The next one is next Wednesday on the occasion of the International Day of Happiness, on cultivating joy for food systems transformation, where we'll have, we often have people and individuals inspiring us with their story, in this case of how they bring joy in cooking and farming and catering, but we'll also have a yoga laughter practice. And so we'll have an event also on farmers' well-being and psychological resilience on the 27th. So this is more looking in a way at the more collective and institute. Well, those three links again, but these sessions tend to bring a lot of people interested in this issue of inner change, and so you get to change. But Noemi, you can tell us a bit more about the COFSA offerings, like the coffee chats and the sharing circles that we're cooking up.
Yeah, so the events that Charlotte talked about are events that we do publicly. So for not only for COFSA members, but are open to everyone. While for COFSA members, we have specifically community activities monthly. So for example, coffee chats, we have the induction onboarding call to get to know each other every month. And also we have sharing circles. We'll have the first one in April 5th, for the Day of Consciousness, and it's an informal space where members can join, and we just share personal but also professional things about life. It sounds very dramatic, but it's not. But it's a space, yes, to really connect and practice deep listening and open our heart and speak from the heart. So it's really nice practice that we took from the Plum Village tradition of the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. So yeah, we will experiment this starting from April.
Noemi, can you explain how the coffee chats work? Because they're also
Yes, so the coffee chats, basically every month we send a form. So if you would like to take part of a coffee chat with another member of the Alliance, so far we randomly match members. But if you would like to speak about something in particular, like for example, farmers' well-being, we try to match people that are coming from, that have the same interest. So yeah, this is mainly how it works. And also we have biannual alliance gathering where members come together to celebrate the progress. And of course, once you get part of the alliance, you can also share information about your organization. We have a participatory newsletter where you can share your information about your work. We also have a section on our website for members where you can showcase your work. So yes, if you would like to get a bit of visibility, part of our work is really to amplify, your projects within our network. And yeah,
as long as the projects related to
conscious food, yeah, of course.
Fantastic. I think we've covered most of the basics. Jeroen, or Noemi?
Well, yeah, I'm very curious, of course, to hear more from you and and hear about your experiences. I'm also realizing we have 3 minutes left in our scheduled time. So maybe this is a final call for a final question. Otherwise, we're going to say, hope to see you soon.
Mm-hmm.
And also feel free to connect with us personally, with Charlotte, with Noemi or myself. I'm not sure you have our email address, at least the one of Noemi, but you can find us probably on LinkedIn or other places. But yeah. Okay, great. There it is.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And I think somebody just arrived in the meeting. We're closing, but we've recorded it, so you'll be able to hear the recording.
Great.